Hi guys, welcome back to Global Gardens. Today we are going to talk about soil, why is soil important, and we're going to talk about something called erosion, or what happens when soil disappears. So first of all, there's a bunch of different types of soil. Soil can range in color from red to kind of a green to more yellow to brown to black. Different colors often indicate the different substances that is inside soil. Soil is made up of 4 different components: air, water, organic material, and minerals. 1/4 of soil is made up of air. That is a lot of air. That's why soil can be fluffy. And that's why not all soil is super hard. The fluffy is all the air. 1/4 of soil is made up of water. So inside your soil, even if it feels pretty dry, there is water amidst the soil and holding all the soil pieces together. Also in your soil is organic material. Organic material might include little bugs, it might include different bacteria, it might include pieces of plant or sticks, just little pieces of broken down organic material. The last 45% of your soil, or almost half of it, is made up of minerals. There are 3 different types of minerals in soil. Your soil might be mostly sand, or that stuff you find at the beach. Your soil could be mostly clay, or like some really heavy, it's kind of more red, it has a lot of water in it. Or it could have silt. Silt makes the best type of soil because it's smooth, carries a little bit of water, but also leaves room for the plants to grow. So in your class, you all are going to get some soil. I want you to observe your soil. Use your magnifying glasses, but what do you see in the soil? Can you see little tiny pieces of sand? Can you see pieces of clay? Clay is even smaller than sand, but it bunches all together in big bunches. Or do you see some silt? So one best way to test your soil is to take a little handful of it like this, and you're gonna start forming it into a ball. As you form it into a ball, think about what texture is my soil? What color is my soil? Does my soil smell like anything? This one kind of smells gross. So roll it into a ball, and then once it's into a ball, open up your hand and see what happens. If you want, you can even drop it. If your soil is made up of sand, it's gonna break apart instantly, right? Because sand doesn't hold together. If it's made out of silt, it's gonna fall apart when it's poked, kind of like this. But if it's made out of clay, that ball is not going anywhere. So that's one way to tell what is in your soil. Now, why do you think it's important to know what type of soil you have? Well, if you have really sandy soil, like at a beach, and you try to plant a tree in it, that tree might not get enough water. Have you guys ever seen trees growing next to the beach? Not very often. It takes a specific type of tree that can grow in that much sand. Likewise, if your soil is made up of just clay, it's going to be really hard for plants to break through clay because clay is super sticky and it holds together. So clay can make it hard for plants to grow in. But if you have silty soil, silt is a perfect combination of clay and silt and sand, and it allows plants to grow through it and to be happy. It allows water to move through the soil and is the best for your plants. Okay, so now that we've talked about soil, we're going to talk a little bit about erosion. First of all, what is erosion? Erosion is the changing of earth features through wind or water. This can be done on a large scale. Like, have you ever heard of Pangea? Pangea was when all the continents of the world used to be combined as one big continent. Then, due to erosion, due to wind, due to water, due to the shaking of the earth, those continents broke apart, and now we have 7 continents instead of just 1. So that's erosion on a large scale. But erosion on a small scale could look like me watering my plant. Here's some water. Do you guys notice what's happening to that soil? Do you guys see that soil? So this is an example of erosion. Erosion is like when you're watering a plant and the water pushes the soil out of the pot. And we're like, hey, no, don't do that. Why? Well, because we want that soil in the pot so our plant can get nutrients from it. In nature, and often in potted plants, that very top layer of soil is called topsoil, and that layer is where your soil holds the most nutrients. That layer is the best layer for plants. That's where they get all their nutrients in order to help them grow. When erosion comes and washes away all those nutrients, kind of like it did for our potted plants, it takes the soil over 500 years to replace the nutrients that are washed away. So that's why it's really bad, especially outside if you're farming or if you're gardening or just in nature, when wind or water comes and rushes away the soil, because it's taking away all the plant's nutrients. And it takes a really long time for those nutrients to be built back up. You could say, okay, our plants need nutrients, so it's bad to have erosion, but what if we just added some fertilizer? The plants will be fine, right? Yes and no. There's other cases where erosion can cause huge damage to people too. For example, a few years ago, I used to live in Kenya. I lived on the top of a mountain and a village lived below me. Our mountain didn't have very many trees. The trees had all been cut down to use as firewood, and so it's a bare mountain. Now, when rainy season came, it rained a ton, and the soil started rushing off of the mountain, and there was a huge mudslide. And the mudslide carried soil from the top of the mountain where I was living all the way into the village, and it crushed houses, and it ran over the town until the whole village was covered in mud. So erosion can be a serious issue. Hey guys, so you might be saying, Kenya is super far away, mudslides sound bad, erosion is bad, but that doesn't happen here. And I would say, have you guys ever heard of the Dust Bowl? So once upon a time, there used to be a desert in Oklahoma, and that desert was called the Dust Bowl. In the 1930s, there were huge windstorms in Oklahoma, and the weather just tossed up so much dirt everywhere that you couldn't see, and everything was covered in dirt. Because there were no plants holding the soil together, this wind was able to just pull all the dust everywhere, and it just threw it all over the place. This Dust Bowl windstorm changed Oklahoma landscape for forever. Both of these cases of erosion, both in Kenya and in Oklahoma, are due to removing all of the trees and plants, and also are caused when huge wind or water storms come. What do you think might be ways to protect against erosion? Okay, so we just talked about two different scenarios where erosion has caused huge problems. We talked about in Kenya, where due to deforestation, water came and washed away a whole mountain. And then we talked about Oklahoma, where we removed all of the trees, and then because all the crops died due to a drought, the wind was able to blow all of the dust and the dirt away from the soil, and it blew into people's houses even. That's how much dust there was. So today we're going to kind of do a little experiment to see how then do we prevent erosion. So I'm going to build two little mountains. Our first mountain will just be our soil mountain, and they're going to be about the same size. So there's our little soil mountain. Our second mountain will again be a soil mountain, but this one we're going to cover it with leaves. And we could pretend that those leaves are similar to either like trees growing on our mountain, or maybe it's grass that's covering our mountain, or maybe we just want to pretend that our mountain is covered in leaves, and that's fine too. Now that we have our two mountains, we are going to water them, pretending that this is rain or a type of water erosion. Now I'm going to dump out the water, that way we can see how much soil the water carries away from each mountain. So we just applied a bunch of water to our two little mountains, and now let's look at them. So here's our little soil mountain that was plain. He's looking a lot smaller than he used to be. Here's our leaf mountain. If we pull these leaves off, you'll see he's about the same size as he used to be. When we look at the cups of water, or the water that drained off, we see that this one, you can see kind of a line of sediment is forming, and that one has a lot of dirt carried in it. This one in comparison is a lot lighter, which means there's a lot less soil carried away in the water. So what I gather from this experiment is that our soil without the soil cover, more of it was washed away when our water came. Our soil with the soil cover, a lot less of it was washed away with the water. So 2 ways to fight against erosion is to 1, plant, and to 2, cover your soil. Why do you think planting would be so helpful in protecting from erosion? What do we know about plant roots? You can pause the video and discuss. What about soil cover? Today we looked at one type of soil cover, might be leaves. You would find that kind of soil cover maybe in a forest. Are there any other types of soil cover that you can think of? You can also pause the video and discuss. So there's one famous woman who lived in Kenya. Her name was Wangari Maathai. She, in 1977, so almost 50 years ago, started what's called the Green Belt Movement. She saw that Kenya had a big problem of deforestation, or people were cutting down trees for firewood and not replacing the trees. And like I told you in my story, when that happened, mudslides would come and wash away all of the soil and would sometimes even wash away villages. So Maathai had a great idea. She started the Green Belt Movement, where she and a bunch of women planted trees. They would plant thousands of trees in big clumps together, and those clumps helped protect from wind or water erosion. They kind of stood as barriers between dry soil and dry soil, so that when water came, it would get stopped by all the trees, or get sucked up by their roots, and that way less water would be moving through the soil. Wangari Maathai has become a peace hero, and she even received a Nobel Peace Prize. Since 1977, she's helped plant over 51 million trees. That's a lot of trees. She died in 2011, but the Green Belt Movement is still happening. She played her one small part, and she started this whole movement where lots of people now have begun planting trees in order to stop erosion. She tells this story about the hummingbird, and I'm going to let you guys hear her tell it.
The story of the hummingbird is about this huge forest being consumed by a fire. All the animals in the forest come out and they are transfixed as they watch the forest burning, and they feel very overwhelmed, very powerless, except this little hummingbird. It says, I'm going to do something about the fire. So it flies to the nearest stream, takes a drop of water, and puts it on the fire, and goes up and down, up and down, up and down, as fast as it can. In the meantime, all the other animals, much bigger animals like the elephant with a big trunk, could bring much more water. They are standing there helpless, and they are saying to the hummingbird, what do you think you can do? You're too little. This fire is too big. Your wings are too little. And you're big, so small, you can only bring a small drop of water at a time. But as they continue to discourage it, it turns to them without wasting any time and tells them, I am doing the best I can. And that, to me, is what all of us should do. We should always feel like a hummingbird.
So in this story of the hummingbird, Wangari Maathai is talking about how the little bird, even though his beak is so tiny, and there's so many other bigger animals who could probably do a lot better and faster work, he is trying his hardest to put out the fire. Bit by bit, he's picking up water and dropping it on the fire and going back to the stream and back and back and back. And that is kind of an analogy for her own life. Wangari is saying that she is just one person and she can't change erosion for the whole world, but she is doing her part. So that could apply both to erosion, but also to other areas in our lives. Sometimes we feel like we play such a small role and maybe we don't make a big difference. But really, just like the hummingbird, doing one drop at a time, doing the best we can, is really the best thing possible, and that does make such a big difference. Last thing today, I want you guys to go outside and see if you can identify places of erosion. When you find erosion, you need to ask yourself 3 questions. 1, what kind of erosion is it? Is it water or wind erosion? If it's water erosion, where did that water come from? What direction? Then our second question is, where did that water go? If it got here, where did it go? And then the third question is, where did the soil go? Because we need that. So I'm going to show you some erosion that I found in my backyard. Go team! This is my yard. You can see right here is my gutter. And then here is a garden that I have. Do you guys see this line in the soil? There's a line there. You might even see the line continues, and then there's this huge hole. But why do you think that happens? This type of erosion, it looks like water erosion because it comes in this little divot line. Wind erosion would have swept the whole area away, but because there's this little line, I'm pretty sure it's water erosion. The next question to ask is, where did the water come from? Well, when it rains really hard, water is supposed to be caught by those gutters up there. But for me, my gutters don't catch the water, and instead they drop all the water right down there immediately. So all the water lands right along this line. So the next question is, where did the water go? Well, it looks like the water followed this line, and then it comes to these bricks, and it maybe goes in the ground or dissipates from there. And then where did the soil go? Well, I'm looking here, and can you guys see? But on top of these leaves, there's a ton of pieces of soil. Ooh, there's a really big slug under that leaf. But you see? So what happens is the water is hitting here, and it makes the soil bounce off. And so the soil is landing on top of the leaves. It's going over here. There's even pieces of garden dirt in my grass. Okay, so that was my example of erosion that I found in my yard. It's your guys' turn to go and see if you can find erosion, either by the school, or maybe you need to do this at your own house. But you guys should go find some erosion. Remember, you need to ask yourself, is it wind or water erosion? If it's water, where does the water come from? Where does the water go? And where did the soil go?